some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. Come to you live each weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for an hour. Run it live on whatever platform is available, because platforms are just tools. But we simulcast it over at gunchannels.com because all websites aren't community, but Gun Channels is. And I noticed that we got a comment out there from Guy that comments and says, if a gun show is daily, does that mean it's a gun store? Can multiple businesses be in a store? So definitely multiple businesses can be in a store. Think of like a gunsmith or a Cerakoter, being affiliated with a gun shop but separate. So that can happen. But I think a gun show is more like a mall, right? Like there's a lot of stuff there, but the event or the accumulation of them is a thing, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I've always thought of us as kind of like a gun show. We have guns and knives and all things related.
Yep.
All right, so we're let's see, we're on the gun channels there, and we're watching the comments. This is an effort in the new media, not taking all their old-fashioned traditional stuff and putting it on the internet. That's not new media. That's just doing the established stuff digitally. Instead, we're using the commenting, the interactivity, the nature that we're all watching this in real time for the most part, and then the people that are listening to it or watching it in the future, either on gunstreamer.com or guntube.org, or as a podcast or something, have the ability to contact us directly, as opposed to large productions where the superstars are so out of reach that they never hear comments or interaction with the actual viewers of it. So that we're at a level where that's possible. Let's use that and be part of the conversation here, like I say, either now or in the future. We also have some technology available to us that lets a bunch of us jump into the same room at the same time and have a conversation. So we got Clover jumping in from Texas. He's back.
Thanks. Appreciate it. But
then we go up to Kansas. Say hey to Gary. Thanks for jumping in.
Thank you for the invite.
Did you notice the image today?
Yeah, there's a chicken or two on there.
Yeah, it's all the girl chickens. Wait, no, that's all the boy chickens looking at some sort of blue egg, I guess. Wait, girl chickens do or don't have that thing under their mouth? Well, all chickens have that, I guess. I don't know. I can't tell a boy chicken. Is it just the roosters that have the stuff, the red stuff? What do we call that?
No, you're talking about a wattle, and no, female chickens can have small ones.
Okay, so we can't tell if these are boy or girl chickens, but definitely they're all checking this thing out. All right, so then I guess we'll go over to Doug. Thanks for jumping in, Nevada.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
And then we'll go up again to the Woods in Washington. Washington Woods. This channel is known as WW, Washington Woods.
Hey, thanks for the invite. Great show earlier there, Clover. Really interesting.
Yeah, it was a good show with Yankee, which is odd. And, of course, right at the end there, a bunch of people were asking, legit questions, and you started having conversations. So, we were, half an hour into Clover's show. I don't know what time you started, but I missed, a good chunk of the beginning for sure.
Yeah, I went on about 15 after finally.
So what was the draw to that topic? The idea was a banner rotation system, a delivery system for your own network of either banners or content that you can distribute. So was that something that somebody asked for, or that you decided was needed, or what was the impetus?
No, I mean, it's something that I've been playing with the last week or so, maybe even last couple of weeks. And, I had another topic in mind up until, I don't know, midday or something today. And I thought, that's a little more advanced. It's a little more nerdy. It's a little than the other topic. The other topic was more basic. And I was like, with the panelists especially, they may get a little bit more out of this topic than they would the other one. The other topic I feared would generate more of a rant session about, because it was about YouTube policy stuff. So I kind of, I thought, well, that's going to be one that there's going to be probably a lot of comments out there on the Gun Channel side and the YouTube side, and there's going to be a lot of back and forth probably on the panel. And it's like, let's dump that and let's go with something that's straight up educational, right?
Yeah, I dig it. And like I was saying in there, I think that's one of the, I don't know what to call it, like one of the skill sets that can really give your project, whatever project you're doing, just more power. Because if it's money you're looking for, that's how you create it. And if it's reach and help that you're trying to offer to other channels or to projects, that's how you get it, and then you direct it. Really neat. And plus it just gives you a much better interaction with the web when you can see the effect that you're having. You can see the numbers that actually add up instead of just assuming or not even realizing. I think it's tough for me, at least, since I've been in the mix of it for so long, to think about where people are in percept or awareness, I guess, of all the stuff that there is to it. I mean, I can't look at a website and not start thinking about so many stupid things like looking at the Matrix, right? Like I started looking at stuff that normal people, I'm sure, aren't looking at. I don't know what to call like a normal person who doesn't look at the internet upside down. Like when they look at a website, how much of it they're actually paying attention to. Like, oh, that banner there, I wonder where that came from. Like, who's running that banner? How often are they updating this website? Like, how much effort are they putting into it? So just knowing all that kind of stuff, giving people that ability, I think that's awesome. I mean, hopefully it sounds like at least a couple of people that are interested in their projects at that level, we're looking for those skills or those abilities, are going to be able to run with that. That's cool. And that's something that, how do you know to even go look for that until somebody talks about it?
Well, that's where titles and tags and other things come into play. So, I mean, it's titled and tagged in such a way that, I mean, that could actually apply to, because I had somebody today that asked, we went today and I was helping my youngest, daughter buy a car. And well, we went and seen a good friend of mine who's a car salesman. And, he was like, you hadn't had the store in, years. What are you doing now? And so I told him, and, I was like, yeah, tonight, we got the nerd chat. And so I was flipping through the phone, on the YouTube and stuff and showing him. And, he was like, what do you talk about? Is it a bunch of gun guys? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, predominantly we're firearm related, content creators, influencers, whatever. I said, but this particular chat could apply to anybody that's out there. So, one of the struggles and stuff with the after hours is to try to title and tag and all the SEO stuff, which we've talked about numerous times, is to structure that in such a way that if people are on and looking for education on those topics, whether they're doing beauty or travel vlogs or race cars or whatever it might be, it's still, that's beneficial to their projects as well.
I really liked it just from the consumer's point of view, just as knowing not a lot about the internet. It was really interesting to figure out where ads came from, and kind of like what G just said, when I'm on other websites, to kind of figure out whether this is a quality website or not. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I can agree to that.
Yeah, once you can interpret some of the elements, it's sort of like when you walk into a store, let's say a gun shop, and every single element of the gun shop is like marketing coming from SIG or from Colt or from wherever, versus going into a gun shop and every inch of the place is like some weird gun with a story behind it that's been, an inch of dust and, mounts and from prior hunts and, all kinds of signs and, things of the stories from the shop. It's like that when you look at a website. Once you understand the elements, or at least you get kind of accustomed to looking at them and stuff, you can kind of look at it and go at a glance like, oh, okay, this is somebody who knows what they're doing, or this is some klutz, or this is somebody that's, got it really together, or somebody that's how is this even working? You can kind of tell a lot of that from the way it's put together when you start, all you have to do is really look and then hover over a couple of things to see where they're coming from. But that's enough of Clover. You can go listen to Clover's chat if you want to listen to Clover Tack. We're here at the Daily Gun Show, and I was going to talk about books tonight. So I'm going to try to get my cell phone working, and we're going to go on a field trip. So hopefully everybody's got their permission slips. If you did not get a permission slip signed by one of your parents, your grandparents won't count for legal reasons. Then whoever didn't get their permission slip signed, you have to go over to Tater's Tube and stay here. Otherwise, the rest of us are going to go on a field trip to the library and look at gun books. So getting my phone here going, you guys take it away. What do you think of when you think of gun books?
I think of that thing that sits on my coffee table that makes my in-laws uncomfortable.
They can definitely be conversation pieces for sure.
The first thing that came to my mind was the one that I just reread was the Glock book. That was fascinating.
Yeah, I'm still reading on that one.
That's one of the best ones I've ever read. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I loved how it was not the story of really the gun, it was the story of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way it was written, it was really well done. And that guy's not even a gun guy. But I thought he did a pretty fair, like, this is what happened. We don't get a lot of that anymore. What kind of gun books do you guys got?
Most of mine are, I've got a pretty good library of history stuff and things like that. But, as far as books, most of mine are, reloading, firearm related, almost like manuals and things like that. And one of my favorites is the Smith & Wesson book I've got. It really goes into detail on, I'm talking about down to the dash models, and everything. And it breaks all of that down in like explicit detail on the differences and the years they were made. And it's got most of that stuff for Smith & Wesson anyway. You can't find that online. You could find that if you really got big into like a Smith & Wesson forum or something like that. You could cobble together and get questions answered. But since buying that book, I know I've answered, even Smith & Wesson revolvers and stuff that I don't even own, but I've had people ask me, certain things about them. And I have never run across a single question that was not answered somewhere in that book. It's amazing. So if you're a Smith & Wesson person, I highly recommend that one.
Do you know the approximate date that it was published?
I could pull it down and look.
Yeah, because I'd love to get one of those. I've got an old Mossberg book that's like that before the internet, when I was just a kid into guns, my favorite thing is Mossberg 500s. And it's a book on that, and it's been my Bible forever.
Well, this one is Standard Catalog of Smith & Wesson. This one is a 3rd edition, so it's probably, I'm guessing it's a continuing thing. And let me see if it's got a date somewhere in it here. 2006 is the copyright date that I'm looking at. But yeah, it's a third edition Standard Catalog of Smith & Wesson.
I found it. Thanks, Tat.
Excellent resource and excellent read. I mean, I'll go and somebody will ask a question and I'm like, I don't know that, but I can try to look it up because I've probably got a resource, and then I'll look it up. And what's crazy is I'll find myself reading, 3 or 4 or 5 pages, into it on a particular model, even after I found the answer.
Right. Or there's another model on the other page. So you want to read about that one too?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing about it is I don't retain the information. Unfortunately, that's why it's good to have it around. I don't remember where certain screws are on a, third model hand ejector from 1905 or whatever the heck it is. But I always go and look it up. So it's one of them things that you can read about them over and over and over. And to me, it's fun.
So you guys are talking about like tech manuals, or like not necessarily just like the manual for the gun, but like a aftermarket thing that tells you how to actually work on the gun with some like insight and some experience.
No, this one's not.
Oh,
this one is more of, because it doesn't talk about the actual parts and like show diagrams or talk about how the parts interact or anything like that. It talks more about the year they were produced, the year this feature was introduced, what type of finish it was, why that finish was available. Yeah, that sort of thing. So more the history side of it, I guess.
In the like for a collector's guide type of thing, like here's all the differences between them and how to interpret which one is yours and which serial numbers were like at this factory, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I thought you were talking about you know what I'm talking about. Like they're not necessarily just like the manual, but like the in-depth.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know how when you get like a blue book of value, right? And it's got all the values, and then at the bottom of each one, yeah, there they are. And then at the bottom of each one, it kind of goes into like a little short synopsis about there's so many of these produced. They were made from here to here. So many of this model was made in this factory. It's kind of like that, but a really elaborate version of that just on the Smith & Wessons.
Well, when I was thinking you were talking about those other kind of manuals, I was going to say these DVDs, like AGI made these, but you know, these are like maybe an hour or more. Like the Thompson one, they just take apart the Thompson and tell you the differences between the different Thompsons and then put it back together. And as an armor course or whatever, it's kind of interesting, but just, you know, in general, it's just a neat, for people that are interested in the machine, it's a neat, you know, to see each and every little part come apart. They don't necessarily talk about history or anything. It's more of a tech manual. But I was going to say those DVDs, they're interesting, but they're also a pain in the butt. Like a book, you can just open it up. You know it's halfway through the book or it's towards the end or something. It's after that color picture, right? A DVD, you got to watch the stupid DVD every time.
Yeah. Now, you've got one there on your shelf that I've got too, and that's the Ammo Encyclopedia. That is cool.
Cartridges of the World? Or this
well, I've got both. I've got Cartridges of the World as well as that Ammo Encyclopedia. But that Ammo Encyclopedia, I find myself reading that pretty often.
I don't know if you can tell, it's not even out of the package. They sent me this one, and I was like, hey, thanks. And I never even used it. I like this a lot. This is almost like history and stuff. What is this? Oh my God.
It's kind of the same.
Okay.
I think it
more
goes,
or less.
It goes a little more in depth. The Ammo Encyclopedia, I think it goes a little more in depth.
So, G, where do we apply to have a library card for your library?
There you go.
Am I breaking up, or is that? So these are gun books. These are scout books, but this is AK books. These are all AK books. These are like general gun books. And then this is general gun books. And then I guess there's some other kind of books over here. So would you say you have more or less gun books? Woods?
Far less. I might have that many teaching books.
Am I connected?
Yeah.
Okay, so then Clover?
Yeah, even in total, not even with gun books, it's less than that for sure.
Okay. Dog? Gary?
Oh, dude, your gun book library makes the two that I own look insignificant.
And you've got me beat because I own one.
The books. So is there a wicked lag or is it just me?
I think it may be you because I'm not hearing a problem.
I'm gonna re-phone because I can hear you guys, and then it's like takes a minute. I'm gonna So talk amongst yourselves. We'll dig into some of these books. I guess I'll leave it at this so you guys can see this. Is that okay?
Yeah. So, yeah.
What books do you have, Dog Body? Because you've only got two.
I've got. I feel bad. Both of them are basically picture books. One of them is a picture book that I picked up at a Barnes and Noble that was closing. Mm-hmm. and it just has all the bunch of pictures of guns that were from like 1890 until like 1940 covered.
Nice, dude. That's yeah. Shoot me an email or something with a name of that. That's right along my time frame. I love that era.
And then I picked up one from Costco years ago. That's another coffee book, and it's from basically, I think it has guns from like 2000 to 2004, and it's just a collection of military rifles and handguns from around the world.
Nice. Yeah, I'd be interested in another one for sure.
I'm just noticing that it's not telling me I'm back on the computer. It's not telling me how many people are watching in my, in this browser window or whatever. That's weird. Like normally it shows us down here. I'm going to refresh and see what happens.
Just Google being silly, I'm sure.
It blew me out a second ago and made me sign back in. That hadn't happened in a long time.
What hasn't?
Oh, when I went to type in the chat and it said you're not signed into Google, it made me sign back in.
Oh,
which is crazy.
I just refreshed and I still don't. You know what I'm talking about down at the bottom where you have like the links and stuff? It usually tells you how many people are watching.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're changing something.
Could be.
So anyway, if it's worth it, I'll put the thing back on and we can dig into some of them books. Or if it's a waste of time, I don't have to.
Well, I mean, you're using bandwidth and some other things doing that. So, I mean, just, you can just talk about some. If you have something that's interesting or your favorites, let's just talk about them.
Any recommendation, like must-finds?
The guy, G-Webs, I guess, is thinking on that. We're talking about books, and I don't know if catalogs and things like that necessarily come into play or not, but the buddy I got that I visit with at the Wanamaker Tulsa Arms Show that's got all the antique ammo, rare ammo and all that stuff. He is also into the old catalogs, like old Sears and Roebuck and the old ammunition. Back in the days when you could like order crap from Remington or Winchester, like straight from their catalog to your house and stuff. And I was flipping through one of those at his booth, and it was extremely interesting. And I was like, wow, this would be an interesting little read to flip through there and kind of read about that, because it went into quite a bit of detail about some of that stuff. And you're talking about, things not getting lost in translation because it was kind of in the wording of the day and all of that. It was just very interesting to read that stuff.
Yeah, I remember seeing an old catalog ad one time back when they were trying to make the aluminum sportsman shotgun. I remember looking at those old ads.
The aluminum shotgun, not shot shells, the shotgun itself, right?
Yeah, the barrel and everything was all aluminum. And apparently the thing kicked like a mule, so they never took off.
Well, I would imagine so. Yeah, you would want a little bit of weight in that, I would suppose.
I think I want to say that was an old Roebuck catalog that I found that ad in. But
interesting.
It's fun to see all those old prices, but you got to realize that they were making $1.25 an hour.
Yeah, nothing like seeing a single action army go for $9.
Right.
Are you talking about back in the olden days?
Yeah, those old ads you see sometimes.
Yeah, but we've done the math on them. It's still like a $200 or $300 nowadays. They're basically the equivalent. So yeah, I don't know what's happening. It's almost like there's too much metal between here and there. But I don't know what you guys come up with for it kind of depends on what you're into, I suppose. As far as a general gun book, I don't know if there is a general gun book. The blue books are useful. They're fun to thumb through, and you can get them inexpensive if you go to an older one. So each year, gun shops usually get a new one because their livelihood depends on current values, and they're still useful. even though there's internet and gun broker and stuff. So I would say that's probably a good start. You can probably get them for $5 or $6 used, like an old one.
I mean, I'll rephrase my question a little bit, because like when I'm on the road a lot now, and I like to read historical books when I'm on the road. So if there was going to be, like 2 or 3 of the best gun history books out there to read, like, be it Gaston's book or something like that.
We already talked about Glock, America's Gun, and that one is insanely awesome because it talks about Glock, but Glock is completely intertwined with the modern gun culture and industry. So by looking at Glock, he did that. I don't know if he did it intentionally, knowing it was so influential, but he picked a topic that, even I guess you could do the same thing with Smith and Wesson. They certainly had as much influence and whatnot, maybe one of the other companies, but that one has such such breadth. I don't know what the word would be like. It covers so much of the spectrum that it's much more than just a look at Glock. It's definitely a look at the gun culture today, and at least recently. So that one's a good one for just general history, because they'll get into Smith and Wesson and Ruger and other companies, that are part of the Glock story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of another one. I haven't read one there must be others that are similar that have some like the same kind of experience or significance or like the same amount of reach, but most of the stuff I've read is like 2A for the most part. I can't say that. I've read a lot of stuff, I guess, but stuff that isn't like a tech manual or just a dead-on history of something, typically 2A. I really like the magazines. Magazine articles are nuts. There's a ton of them, and I got a ton of magazines. You go to a gun show and you find somebody that's got I found a guy who had an MRE box, like the case that the MREs come in, that box, just full of those American survival guides. And I think they were like $1 a piece or something. And I was thumbing through there and just grabbing them. And eventually I was like, how much do you want for the box? And it was like, that whole shelf of them. It's like $20 or $10 or something crazy. He just didn't want them anymore. So, you can sit there forever. That probably taken me 4 years to read all the articles in there. You gotta like the magazine, I guess. But there's certainly a lot of variety in gun magazines, and you could get people that had a subscription and bring it to a gun show or a swap meet or something and offload the whole thing for a couple of bucks.
Is there 3 or 4 books, G, that you have that are your favorites, that you find yourself going to more often than others?
Not me. Do you guys? It's just there's too many different things. A reloading book, yeah, you go to your reloading book all the time. So you'd have a favorite reloading book or two, for like backs or something. I don't know. I don't really go to them too much anymore. So I'm trying to think. If there's any, I don't really bring any with me. I guess maybe like there's some, I have a bunch of traveler's guides. I'll buy those things a year old sometimes, save $1 or $2, and still have fairly current ones. Those are something you might refer to, especially traveling or whatever, occasionally.
Yeah. We're talking about stuff we go to on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, other than other than reloading stuff or the blue book. I used the crap out of the blue book.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in very many forums or groups on Facebook or anything like that that are very active, again, I go back to that Smith and Wesson book. I've used the cover is not great on it. It's been well used, and I've never sit down and read it cover to cover. I probably read the whole thing, so it's been used quite a bit. I guess it just depends on how active you are with talking about that kind of stuff.
I've used the blue book for the cyanide special projects. I've done it with many revolver projects. I've done it with AK projects. I've done it with AR projects. Blue book has so much interesting shit in it besides prices. It's really a cool resource.
Yeah, I collect the special edition little Marlin Model 60s, and the blue book, it's invaluable for that. because it doesn't list them under the Model 60s, but like at the end of all the various Model 60s, it does talk about the Otasco versions and the, what am I thinking, the
Glenfield.
Big Five, and all of those.
So as far as like useful books, I think the SAS Survival Guide is pretty awesome. There's like multiple versions of that. It's pretty like down to but nuts and bolts, not a lot of fluff.
Yeah, I can see how. Yeah, I can see how that one would be a good one. I don't have very many books, with prepping and survival and stuff like that.
Well, I'm a big fan of the gun shows, and I grew up before the internet going to gun shows and books on all kinds of neat stuff from Palladium Press and Blue. What is it? Something else, Blue something or another. And there was a couple of 3 places that made neat stuff, basically the equivalent of interesting websites back in the day. So you've been to gun shows and you see the table that has the books, and they've got all the different titles that you see. We've seen those titles forever. So throughout the years, especially going to so many gun shows, if I see something I know is like a $7 or $12 more book, and I see it being used for $1 or something somewhere on a table, I will snag it up just because I know it's worth more than that, even if it wasn't necessarily a topic I was interested in. And some of them are just interesting. Some of them are dumb, I guess. But you can certainly get a lot of prepping and survival. At least I got my prepping and survival books like at that era. I was actually just moving stuff around because that one shelf I opened up, I had a monitor sitting there for some reason, like 3 years for no reason. It doesn't even work. Well, it works. I just don't use it on anything. I'm like, why do I have this monitor here I don't use? And I moved it, and I actually could move this pile of books over. Started moving some stuff around, and I was looking at some of them books, and I'm like, man, I don't think it's worth getting rid of them. The internet does shut down or something. It's like, it's data. It's useful info, I guess. It doesn't cost nothing to have them sit there. I don't know if it's worth going out and buying them all. It's certainly worth thumbing through some of them, like the books on like how to hide anything, something like that. It just talks about different ways to hide stuff in your house or whatever. I don't know, in the yard and that kind of thing. And need to go back and read it 100 times? Probably not. Can you pass it along? That's an option with a book. You can pass it along to somebody who's got a similar interest, I guess. But like I say, it's worth thumbing through some of them. They kind of get mad if you're at a gun shop or a gun show even, and just thumbing through all their books. I mean, anybody who's selling books doesn't want you just reading them.
Yeah, I to wonder I didn't get caught one time, but I needed some. You talk about thumbing through books. I needed some load data one time. So, and at the time, nowadays you can kind of get online and you can usually find all that even from the manufacturers. So, other than the background information and stuff, and it's a lot easier to have a book there and just flip it open rather than having to go to a site and actually search through their parameters to find stuff. But I needed some load data, and I went into like a Gander Mountain, and I was in there, and I happened to be thinking about it, and they had one over there, and for whatever reason, a lot of the new books will have the shrink wrap on it to keep you from being able to thumb through it, and there was one on the shelf that didn't. And so in the modern days of cell phones and cameras, I just flipped it open and took pictures of the pages I needed. So I can get where people can get upset sometimes.
Snob was saying on the gun channel side, it's got an old book at a yard sale, Practical Gunsmithing from 1989. And that made me think one of the reasons I have a bunch of books too is because I'm in a college town, and there's a used bookstore. There's a couple of used bookstores, a really big chain in Arizona, and there's a couple of, I guess it depends on the year. There's been a couple of them in town though, and they're big. They take like the anchor spot of a strip center. So like the size of a shopping center, except just a bookstore, and it's used books. So I guess they probably have new books in there, but like 80% of it or more is used books. So in a college town with a bunch of people that retire, it's dangerous if you like books going into those stores, because they're just, like the gun section is amazing sometimes. like somebody will sell a collection, I guess, and it'll be amazing for a little while, or I don't know how they do it. Maybe they move the books around between their stores or something. But when I was a kid going to school and stuff and needing to go there for books, for school books and stuff, I got my books there used all the time. You know, I'd buy books. Again, this was the beginning of the internet back then still, so I still appreciated having books, especially when, again, you could get a $14 book for $3 or something. So I got a bunch of them that way, and I did get a bunch of old ones just because something to thumb through and look at. And I'm thinking of a couple that were like how to skin critters from like, not the olden days, but like the 50s. And it's certainly different. And some of the Gun Digest, somebody said something about Gun Digest.
Oh, I love that when I was a kid.
They're huge books. They're kind of obnoxious because they're the size of a phone book. But, you know, again, looking at one from like the olden days, 60s or something, is just interesting to see the development of everything.
Yep.
And I still like books. I still like the feel of books. I mean, maybe it's a teacher thing, but sometimes I just want to read about a book. I don't want to.
Of course, Gun Digest 2010 is the best Gun Digest that was ever published.
I can agree with what you were saying there, Woods, about liking the feel of a book. I still find it to be a lot more enjoyable to, if I'm going to have to read for any substantial amount of time, I'd rather read a book than read a screen.
Yeah, there's something about, you know, with digital and the backlight. There's just something about that yeah, any length of time, it's going to mess with my eyes.
Well, for certain things, you know, you're working on gunsmithing or reloading, or you just, like when I was doing the decks and stuff, just having books is just different than thumbing through tabs. And you can't put well, I guess you can put a tablet down on a table or something like you can a book, but, you know, while you're reloading or whatever.
Yeah, one time I had a, you know, set up in here. I had those little, oh heck, I don't even know what you call them, but they were the little mini laptops. I don't even know what you call them. Like a netbook. It's called like a netbook or something.
Yeah, the 5-inch screens. Those things are awesome.
I think it was a little bigger than that. I think this one may have been. This was an HP, and I think maybe it had like a 9 or a 10-inch screen, and it worked just like a computer. It had Windows 7, I believe, on it. And,
yeah, I have a little Dell like that. It's
and
awesome.
I used that for a while on the bench, but yeah, like I said, a book. You know, you got to go to the Hornady websites. You got to click on the reloading thing, or even if you've got it linked to the reloading thing, you got to click down and you got to click on the bullet, and you got to click on the powder, and you got to click on this, and then you got to scroll through the ones that it lists. And by that time, I could have done flip to the page in the book. You know.
Yeah, and also remember, you don't have to plug in and recharge a book. So there's always that.
Good point.
Well, and then making notes too, because, you know, there's some that, you know, I've got notes in the side, and what's interesting too is I picked up a big bunch of reloading stuff from a guy one time, and it was actually like his brother-in-law or something that owned it previously. He had passed away, an old timer, right? Because most of the stuff was bought in the late 80s, early 90s or something, and I bought it 10, 15 years probably later. But that was the newest stuff in that big old huge lot, was late 80s, early 90s. And some of his reloading books, I mean, I've got them, and there's notes all in there. And it's interesting just to go through and read some of his notes. It was crazy.
And I'm guessing there's notes that are readable, like not weird notes to himself using some kind of weird code or something.
I mean, if you were a reloader, you would understand most of what he was saying. Yeah. It's some of it is shorthand, and some of it is written fast and scribbled in a way where, you know what I'm saying, where he could go back and read it because he kind of knew a general idea of what he was writing. So some of it you got to decipher a little bit, but with basic reloading knowledge, pretty much you could understand what he was saying out in the margins.
So a couple of things coming up in the comments. Guy is saying the 6th grade English teacher had a book on weapons and guns, and all the guys would turn to the modern stuff and point at them and look at them. And that's something, I suppose, that especially well, Gun Digest has that a lot, but a lot of the periodicals once a year they'll take all their, I don't know, their reviews, let's say, or whatever, and they'll make like a buyer's guide. Sometimes those get turned into a bound type of book, and that's the kind of stuff you see in libraries, I guess, and that's sort of outreach. That's a method of getting people into the community or the culture or whatever. Right, they're kind of ambassadors out there forever into the gun community. Personally, they're sometimes kind of dry in libraries, but at least they get kids wet their whistle a little bit.
Right.
So I was going to say, along with that, I don't really have. I have a couple, I guess, that you consider coffee table books. But what's the opinion on those kind of things, like the big, fancy, high image or high quality image, like sometimes hardcover, in-depth type of books that are usually a couple of bucks? Is that something people buy?
That's basically what I have. Those are the books that I have, and I bought them because there's that kid in me that likes to look at the pictures, and also because I thought it would be a great way to just have them out as conversation pieces, especially like when the kids are around.
Yeah, I like that. And then they're sort of like an extract, right? Like they're all the good stuff. Where some of the reference manuals, it's like pages and pages of words, and then there's a picture, like all the pictures are in one little section, because it's all reference material or something, or all interviews or something that's super interesting to somebody, but yeah, you don't just thumb through it and enjoy it.
Yeah, the kids aren't going to want to sit on my lap and, watch and have me read a bunch of tech manual stuff to them.
All right, well, if we don't have to force it, started a little bit late, but I think I'll wrap it up with, or end it with the idea that some of these books that are the half format, I call them, I don't know what to call them, like, half a sheet of paper, where they're like, what I guess, 8 inches tall, but only like 5 inches wide. And so they're paperbacks usually. And we get a lot of those at the Gun Rights Policy Conference. When I attend that, they'll give you a set of them, which is, I don't know, 10 or 12 usually, and there'll be some update type of books that are kind of nerdy, just stats and figures that are updated. Like each year they come out with a new edition of that, and then there'll be some that are actual, books on topics, guns in the workplace, or how to talk to an anti or things, on topics. And then so everybody gets a set of these books, but then after the conference is over, whoever didn't attend, if they anticipated 200 extra people and they didn't show up or they didn't take the books, we'll just offer those books to whoever. And with the Gun Show Loophole Tour last year in Dallas, I took a bunch of extra ones. I took them up on the free ones, right? And I sent those out to people. And one of the reasons I got into the advocacy and awareness, it wasn't because it wasn't pro 2A. I just didn't realize that it's approachable, that it was available to all of us. And that was, my eyes were open to the concept that we are the 2A, like that concept that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. That isn't somebody else. You're not internally vigilantly watching somebody else do it. It's a task that we're all given, and we can either stand up and do something or not. But that concept came when Charles Heller handed me 3 or 4 of those books that turns out now I know came from the Gun Rights Policy Conference. And he was able to casually hand them to me without any, without thinking about it, because he had piles of them. And that's what I was getting at, is that concept of books that, we can have a discussion with somebody and we come up with the idea of having a little business card or something that gives them some bullet points. But it's different when you have a real conversation with somebody, or you're talking to an ally who's getting into the fight, and you can give them some resources, right? So there's something about having books that you can share a book, where I can share a link, and what's that worth? But I can give you a book, and that's been around since we've had books. There's that something about handing someone a thing that's got that info, and that carrying the torch or passing on the torch physically.
Well, yeah, and that you make a good point there, because you give somebody a business card with a link or something on it, it's likely to get lost in the shuffle of papers. But an actual book or pamphlet type thing, they're more likely to pick up and read, and even if they just throw it on a cluttered desk, it's not going to get lost necessarily.
It's not a taggered note on a business card or a little memo on a Post-it note, right? It's a book that has a presentation, it's thought out, and it exists. And like you say, it gets lost in the pile. But when they find it again, it's a book and it's prepared and it's got the information in there. So I don't know. I know a couple of people. I buy constitutions every once in a while, like at the Gun Rights Policy Conference. If there's a table out front and somebody's to raise money has constitutions for $1 or $2 or something, I'll buy $10 worth and have some extra pocket constitutions. Hand those things out to people, offer them, perks or whatever when you're sending stuff to people to follow your projects. Anyway, I wanted to throw that out there, that there's that idea of books that you can.
It makes me think of Common Sense by Thomas Paine, that a lot of our freedoms are because that guy was bold enough to write a little pamphlet that made a bunch of people say, hey, you're right, those guys are screwed, let's get rid of them. Like, same kind of idea.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that dead air, I think we'll end it. Our gun shop today is your local gun shop, so go check out. Oh, I didn't see that. Thanks, guys. Anyway, it's your local gun shop, so go to your shop next time you go. Remember that you got a phone in your pocket. More often than not, gun shops are more than interested to help or have you help them promote the shop. And take a couple of pictures. Take a picture of the parking lot or the signs out front. That can go a long way for someone who's trying to find the shop. If it's in a, what am I trying to say, like a shopping center or something, or if it's got a weird parking lot. Think about somebody who hasn't been to it before. Maybe take a look at their Google or their Yelp or their Bing or whatever kind of reviews and see if they're missing something, and fill in a gap. And once you've done that, or if you've already done that before, then send us an email, dailygunshow@gmail.com. One of the reasons we do the show on a daily basis, so we can feature a gun shop every day. So do our work for us, so we can just sit here being lazy and go find gun shops and tell us about them, and we'll help promote them. Thanks to the guys that jumped in here. Thanks to however many people are watching. Like I say, it's being weird to me tonight. I don't know how many, but guessing a few. So thanks for staying up late and listening to the Daily Gun Show. We'll be back here same time tomorrow. Let's see, tomorrow's Friday. So it'll be Free Patch Friday. If anybody wants to help support what we're doing financially, grab some cool stuff. There might be a couple of promotions going on tomorrow. I have a couple of things up my sleeve. And any purchases tonight, of course, apply to Friday. I don't know if I made that. I think I told people that before. But it also means that Foul Territory is coming up tomorrow. What do we got going on with the tomorrow's show?
Well, I don't know anything in particular is going on, except we're going to have new stuff to give away. We've actually got some Gizzard Gary stickers now, along with some other things, thanks to Alan Anchor. So I'm going to come in and see if you can get a chance of getting some of that stuff.
Very cool. I don't know if I have a ghost sticker. Is there a ghost sticker?
Yes, there is.
There's patches, I know that.
There's several versions of the ghost sticker. There is the regular ghost sticker that I know of, and there is a Drill of the Month ghost sticker.
I know I don't have that one, but I thought I had ghost stickers, but I was looking at my laptop over here, and what did I stick on here? One from USNER Doc. I'm like, holy crap, I don't have a ghost sticker. So now I definitely have room for a Gary sticker. Is it a 3-inch?
I think so. Let's see.
Yeah, that looks like 2.5, 3 inches. That'll work good. So yeah.
Got those, and I got these.
Oh snap! You went all out. Is this some sort of like you're in the pocket of Big Alan Anchor now?
Kind of, sort of. Yeah.
That is. That's how
Cross
this
promotion.
bird's orange. It used to be green, and he's like, "Oh wait a minute! I get my stickers half price if I switch it to be orange." Let's see. Then we got Clover. What do you got? Do you got your show going live tomorrow?
No, I've got the podcast that'll release actually today or tomorrow, depending on where you're at right now. So yeah, 6 a.m. Fridays when it starts to release. It'll release to all the podcast platforms first, and then filter out to the video platforms throughout the day. And then I'm not real sure if this weekend I'll be able to release it or not, but I've got a new sticker coming. And then what else is going on? Oh, I want to plug Contributus, which is the Patreon-like feature that the folks over at Gunstreamer have introduced. I've had a couple of people come over there. I know that there's some all unrest or discontent or whatever it might be with Patreon, and while Contributus does not yet have all of the features that Patreon has, it still has some. So that is definitely an option. So just want to say, if you're out there, if you're not happy with Patreon, don't use that as an excuse to quit supporting people. Find out if they're on Gunstreamer. If they are, you can support them through Contributus over there. And if they're not, maybe shoot them an email or contact them and tell them to get their content over there so you can support them.
It's more than just support. I mean, we've all got our time and our influence, and I guess you can consider it supporting somebody, but what you're doing is you're supporting them to create content. So and I like to focus on the idea that we're all contributing to the creation of what the internet is. So the internet's going to be 100% tomorrow. What percentage of that is going to be guns? If we rely on influencers that are huge and manufacturers and the established system, it's going to be pretty much what it was yesterday, when a bunch of regular people take their phones out of their pocket and contribute, not with the goal of being the next Hickok, but with the goal of having 27% of the internet guns next time around. It does, the day after tomorrow. That's where I don't see it as supporting a channel as much as being part of what's next.
Well, that's true. There definitely is a bigger picture to it. Yes.
I just think our audiences, we all realize that. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking about, at this point, my $20 that I'm putting to my, what do you call that thing? That radio thing I got in the van. Mm-hmm. I mean, the months that I'm not using it, that's $20. It's or $20. That could be 20 news people over on Patreon, because I usually do $1 a person on Patreon. Or I could amp up 10 of them, or I guess 20 of them, to $2.
Sure.
So, just little stuff like that. Eating a hamburger instead of, stay healthy and don't, and throw that $10 at somebody. Yeah,
and I'll tell you my method, over on Patreon, and of course it could work the same with, like I said, with Contributus, because we have options now. But my method, I mean, I started out with 5. I'm like, okay, I'm going to pick 5. I can spend $5 a month. I can cut back on this, or I can scrounge around pennies and quarters in the couch, or in the cup holder in the pickup, or whatever. I can do that. And, and then I found as I've done that, I kind of slowly have worked my way up. I'm not real sure how many I actually, contribute to and help out on Patreon, but, yeah, I mean, I worked up to that. So that's something that, don't feel like, you're overwhelmed. I mean, start with somebody that you follow, you think that has the most potential, whatever, and just kind of work your way up from there.
Dog Buddy, anything coming up?
I'm actually leaving in a couple hours to head north to the scent dog trials that are going on for dogs that are attempting to become search and rescue dogs. And hopefully while I'm up there, I'm going to try to establish some relationships to get them working with shelter dogs that we can get in that line of work. And I'm starting a new project where I'm trying to do I want to get a once a week podcast going where we talk about all things dog related, especially dogs in, the security world and the hunting world, and the dogs we have for our own home family security, and how to train them for when they have to deal with gunfire. And so if anybody has, any input or experience in that kind of stuff that would like to be a part of that, please send me an email at muscledogmafia@gmail.com, or hit me up at the website, Muscle Dog Mafia. And if you want to support these projects that I'm doing, you can buy the book, Pound for Pound, Building Healthy Athletic Dogs, at the website, Muscle Dog Mafia. Thank you very much, G.
You bet. Thanks for jumping in. That sounds cool. I can't say every gun person is a dog person, but I think there's lots of parallels. People that are into dogs get into it at all different levels and for all different reasons and different levels of, like, I guess, seriousness or whatever. So that could be a really neat weekly podcast. Just off the top of my head, I can think of like 7 different directions to take that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. And even if you're not necessarily somebody who ever plans on running and gunning with your dog or hunting with your dog, knowing how to, the aftermath of what happens if you happen to be a dog owner and you have a gun go off in your house. There's a lot of things in that I want to get out there so people have a better understanding of what's going on, because it's extremely common for people to get bit by their own dog after an incident like that.
I prevent that by biting my dog every time something startles one of us. She realizes that I better run when something startles her.
You've been hanging out with those dog sledders too much, biting your dog.
All right, it's just kidding, because there's no way to bite her. She's too fluffy. It's like trying to, like it says, say bite a marshmallow, but you can actually bite a marshmallow, so that wouldn't work. Anyway, so that's the show. Did I get everybody? Woods? Anything going on up in the woods?
I was going to go to that 2A thing that I had found, but it got canceled because it's supposed to snow here tomorrow, and we're in the Northwest. If it snows, we stop doing anything. So I was a little frustrated about that.
So are they rescheduling it, I hope?
That's what I hope. She was going to have a speaker. Remember, I was talking the other day about the insurance commissioner is being weird with like 2A insurance. They were going to have another guy that's running for the insurance commissioner to be speaking on that. So I was super looking forward to it.
Well, I'm guessing they'll reschedule. Hopefully not at some weird time. It was going to be on a Friday. Sounds like.
Well, I'm hoping that they go on a weekend again, because it was going to be on a Saturday, and it's literally like 4 blocks from my house. But
okay,
that's a big deal. But I'm hoping they go on the weekend again and not like during the week or something.
All right, with that, we will end it. We will be back here tomorrow with our show. And, well, since Clover does his, I said live, but I meant release your video. Since you've been releasing yours, you're not releasing it at your old time. We might do something before or after Gary's show again. Gary's is like, what, an hour after that's a Friday show before you budget?
Budget does one at
So-
6 Central, 7 Eastern, and I usually start 2 hours after he starts, so I start at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
I've got a couple of things I'm working on, and depending on how much I can get done tomorrow, I could go to eat lunch with somebody tomorrow, depending on how long that takes, and then I got to stop to do after that. So depending, going to try to get a project started. I'd rather do it Friday than do it on a Saturday, so there might be something pre-Daily Gun Show tomorrow for the 16 people that are watching. Otherwise, we'll be back here and see you at the regular time.